All right, so in the section here, protecting your children, I again put emphasis on that people should be, the term parents. I prefer the term guardian. This person's my guardian, my male or female guardian, and they might be biologically your uncle or your father or whoever it may be. But if they're your guardian, they're going to protect you. They're going to look out for you. It's a role, and that people, at least I would say probably till the age of 25 or so, maybe even 30, they would benefit from having guardians in their life. People they call guardians who look out for them, who are there for them, who physically, also discipline them. Like say, you're grounded for a week because if maybe a woman wore that dress, or for a guy for whatever not doing his homework, and then the whole protecting your children. A big problem is that in the past there used to be gender separations. Because at least when people are younger, it's harder for them to, you expect them to all coexist in co-ed schools and not try to be engaged in sexual activities. It's not fair to expect that. We need to have gender separate schools. We should have men teaching boys. We should have women teaching girls. And in other certain, not in all areas of work, it's not realistic. Especially as adults, we can, we have more self-control, but, in certain things, like maybe female doctors for women, male doctors for men, psychologists, massage therapists, stuff like that, when it's more personal. It's more difficult to protect your children, like I said, because of this schooling, but just encourage them to, if they're already in it and it's, it's inevitable, you don't have any, you can't afford to send them to a private school that's, one gender. Maybe you can't afford to homeschool them. So then the next option is discussing this with them and explaining to them that, to protect yourself and to have a great life, you've got to orient yourself around your future spouse, and that'll allow you to get through the hard times, live for them, not other people, even when you don't even like your own life. You can just think, well, you know what, there's somebody out there who I can live the rest of my life with, and that is a powerful motivator. And I think it's the way life's meant to be, and it's love. When people are not pursuing true love, when they're not trying to work towards marriage, they're not at least doing what they think is the most efficient way to do that, then they're unloving. Okay, so there are little techniques people can use, like for example, young girls can shave their heads and obviously not wear makeup and not be wearing revealing clothing. I actually think that they shouldn't do that until they are married, and then once they're married, they can start growing their hair out, and it's kind of a sign that they're married, and wearing suggestive clothing to each their own. But I just think that there's a discord and a general unhappiness in society because all these people are parading around, be they young or even older, as only their boyfriend and girlfriend, so it's half-hearted, so they're, always like trying to impress each other, uh, and all that, leads to people not being happy because they're not actually married, so they can't be playful, they can't be like sexy because they don't love each other completely, otherwise they would get married. And so they can't really kind of be like confident in their love, and so the woman could like show off a little and that type of thing. I think I think you know strippers should only be married women who uh, are they're married, so it's like the art of showing off their body and celebrating the woman's body, as opposed to it being like a thing where it's like, well, is this person single? Do they like whoever the audience is, whatever, does the audience like them? No, it should be established. Okay. Now this started off being about protecting your children, but it snowballed into a bigger social issues. And so you the way we protect our children is by creating a society that makes sense and is loving. Marriage is designed for children. I found that quote recently, and what it means is marriage is not for the adults. The adults will essentially be okay with or without each other, even if they are divorced. But it's for the children, because the children need people. They need people they can trust to raise them. Two people. Forgetting about the men and women thing, right? Just they need at least two and more people to look out for them and to help raise them, especially if it's a household of where you want to have, if the guy's working, he may work more. You want to have the other parent, often the mother. You want them to be able to be practicing guardianship and be a guardian, like have them come home on time, watch them, talk to them, encourage their self-esteem, so that they, the idea of self-esteem, is that you'll get happily married one day. You deserve that. You don't deserve people to just seduce you and if you're happy, then you don't want to seduce other people either. It's an unloving emotion. So and so the use of a purity ring can help affirm this objective. Here's something. If you have difficulties disciplining your children, by the way, you gotta start when you're early. You gotta be firm and even physical. At least little things like pinches or things that just get their attention. And it gets to a point where you can't really physically discipline them because they're stronger like you, or they can run away or something. So you got to do that in the beginning. You gotta teach them things like pinch them if they run on the sidewalk into the street, stuff, and other things, whatever it is that. So if your child is defiant, be sure to video record these instances and so you can play them back to them when they get older, to show them that you tried, that you made efforts. And for that matter, if they accuse you of being bad parents or something. You have records of showing, the efforts. And if other people accuse you of poor parenting, and remember, at some point, you shouldn't be children either. The goal, you shouldn't want to label them your children anymore. You should want to be brothers or sisters with them, equals, adults, you know, contemporaries. You somebody who you teach your children to be independent, so that they can one day voluntarily come back to you and say, you know what, I align with you. You have the same values as each other, so they want to be with you. There's no societal requirement. So basically, another thing you got to do is once children are passing puberty, they should be required to have self-intimacy, masturbation. They should be able to have sex with themselves, which is obviously more intimate. It's be it involving toys, pornography. Obviously you don't want to. You don't want to be invasive, but you should be telling your kids, you need to be able to pleasure yourself. Otherwise, you'll want to seek that pleasure elsewhere. People say these types of activities of self-intimacy or pornography are wrong, and there may be moral questionable morality in certain pornography, at least if it's not between two married people. It's between all these just hedonistic people who don't love each other. However, what's the greater evil if the pornography helps them to manage their desires and not engage in premarital intimacy? Then it's useful. It's functional. Okay, so again, it's all about labeling each other on a first name basis. Your children, and they you, and you them. That way, you're encouraging them to be having self-control. That that they are a sovereign individual, and they have self-authority. And so then, instead of children saying stuff like "I hate you" to their parents, they respect someone who is not trying to be their master, but rather trying to enable their independence, their independent thinking, so that they can be self-directed. And so when they see themselves as their own authority, they'll start acting like it. And hopefully you've instilled some values in them that allows them to make good choices. Simple things like, why are drugs bad? Well, because they reduce your physical abilities. They weaken your discernment. They make it easier for people to manipulate you. They make you an addict. They affect your sex drive, which, if they're engaging in self-intimacy, they should enjoy that, and that should be natural. Instead of choosing drugs, they should be choosing the natural pleasure, a derivation of self-intimacy. Because even though it may seem strange, when people are a married couple, don't they, shouldn't sex be a central aspect of it, and shouldn't they, share that with each other so that they can enjoy life and not feel like they need other sources of less sustainable sources of pleasure, like alcohol? They they should be able to love themselves, and so why not the masturbation, right? So, you know, the thing is when they see themselves as their own final authority, they're not going to pursue unhealthy behaviors. You know, the whole often I think the reason children will do drugs or premarital sex, first of all, it might be because the parents are doing these things and they're a bad example. But that's again a reason why you got to be careful, especially as, you know, kids who are of a certain, you know, if you understand what I'm saying right now, then you should be able to realize that labeling somebody your parent, and they all, you know, we as we all do, they have faults, and if you label them your authority, then, you know, and they, for example, drink alcohol, then you're gonna, you know, it's why people attract people who are like their parents, because they keep labeling these people their parents, and they keep them in their life even if they might not want to. You don't have to. This is a fundamental issue. And you might think, well, so it's like this, especially in this day and age when you might send your, you know, young children, especially, you know, girls, you send them to school, you want them to be their own authority, because if you're not there and you're supposed to be their authority, they're gonna act submissive, because you're like their, especially people use these terms like, oh, this is my little boy or my little girl, you know, my cute little girl, whatever. When you use these, you know, sweet nothings or whatever you call them, these little nicknames, it makes them submissive to you, and it makes them in a submissive state of mind in general, so they're more likely to get targeted. Especially, you know, you're sending your you know, young daughters to schools where there's older, you know, male teachers and male students. It's like, it's totally anti, you know, what intelligent, you know, it's an insult to our species, because this is not something that we've done in history. We've protected our women from it, you know, in terms of a more historical, you know, review, look into history. So in a way, the interaction with your children is it's actually a, where am I here? It should be a like a business transaction. It should be, if they want your guardianship and they want your helping them meet their needs, then they should be willing to follow your guidelines and be responsible students and follow your ways. Excuse me. I'm getting through this. This may be exhaustive, but it's very satisfying stuff. Hope you're enjoying it. So a few more points on this, and then we'll move on to point 5, preparing for marriage. People make the mistake of saying they love their children. It's like I was saying, it's just not possible to love someone who is dependent upon you, because it's like they need you, so it's contrived. It's not real. It's not like, can't be a complete real love until you're both independently, you know, you don't need each other. You don't need each other to emotionally uplift or financially support. You just want to be with each other, and that's what real love is all about. You know, you train them to be self-reliant, so they can choose as adults if they want to have an equal relationship with you, man to man or woman to woman or woman to man, etc. And this connection, you know, okay. So here's my conclusory thought here. When a married couple has children, the highlight of the experience shouldn't be that, oh, we're having children and they're biologically similar to us and they're, these are ours. No, the highlight of it should be not about being their friend either. It's about disciplining them and instilling your shared values as a couple. So it's going to be hard, raising children, not easy, but it's much more doable and satisfying if you as a married couple have the same values. So you're together, and of course if you have other friends and family who can be their guardian, your children's guardians, and help support them to this is all about being in the frequency of love. And people say, well, why marriage? Because it's for children, and it's creates love and shows them love, and that's why you got to be careful if you're a young person, and if you're saying like, oh, my parents were divorced, or my dad is deadbeat dad, whatever you're saying in your mind, don't use those terms, because that invites that into your life. If your dad's a deadbeat dad, you should refer to him on his first name basis and say, John Doe is not a part of my life. If people ask you about it, you can even say, I don't want to talk about it. He's not important to me, and he's still, resolving his own life difficulties. So he's not someone I want in my life. However you have to say it, or just say it, I don't want to talk about it. You have a right to your privacy. All right, and let's go to point number 5. It's about preparing for marriage. Now, these are things that you may have heard if you've been recently viewing my TikTok or YouTube channel, or reading my notes on my website. I've been publishing my unedited notes on my website, shieldheart.org, and they're also available there. But I think this is the easiest way to really me conversing with you, or at least me my dissertation here on all these points. It's like a good update for what I'm thinking, because it always improves. It always advances. Like if you compare these ideas to my ideas a year ago, I'm sure that you're gonna like my newest ideas more. And there may be parts you disagree with. I'd like to know about it. Talk to me. Aloha.